Gulf states refuse to be launching pad for any U.S. attacks against Iran. U.S. decisions to mass B-2 bombers at Diego Garcia is a result of Gulf Arab monarchs closing airspace to American who was in the event of war with Iran. This is a story out of, what do we have here? In Middle East something times. Middle East Eye, yeah. So today this is an interesting story because if you read between the lines here, the Middle East, they're saying, or I should say, Saudi Arabia, the U.S. is not allowed to land your planes here because we don't want you launching them out of here to go attack Iran, right? Well, why would they care about that? Go do whatever you want. This is the U.S. military, the most powerful military on earth, and can handle anything, and no one will cause any problems because the U.S. will destroy anything. No. So the real reason is because they're afraid, obviously, Iran is going to retaliate, attack the air bases in Saudi Arabia. And, there will be conflict there. And the U.S. will start a bulkhead from Saudi Arabia or something like that and run missions out of there constantly and amass troops. But there's even more to it than that. And I'm going to read a little bit more, and then I'm going to give my take. Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states have imposed a ban on U.S. warplanes using their airfields or skies to attack Iran after U.S. President Donald Trump over the weekend threatened to bomb the country. Saudi Arabia, the U.S., UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait have all told the U.S. they will not permit their airspace or territories to be used as a launch pad against Iran, including for refueling and rescue operations, a senior U.S. official told Middle East Eye. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive military planning. They do not want to be drawn in, the official said. The Gulf states, they just said they don't want to be drawn in. I've never even read this article. They've just said it right there. The Gulf states interagencies is a setback for the Trump administration, which has hoped to use massive airstrikes on the Houthis in Yemen as a show of force to corral Tehran to the negotiation table on a nuclear deal. There you go. That's the word. Why would you really care? I mean, look, I was in the Army, and I was on an operation in the Middle East. We were about to go into Iran and attack it, or retaliate to an attack for Iran. I'm very familiar with Iran. I've read a lot about them. So here's the thing. They are not an invasive country. They do not have, battleships and a huge air force like a lot of other countries do. They cannot. If Iran said something like, we're going to go invade America, it's not even possible, right? They can't. They wouldn't even get their boats into the water, or they really wouldn't even get that far. That's why they have groups like the Houthis do all their attacking. So why would Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, all this stuff, why would they care? Now, Iran does have a large, personnel military. They have a lot of people. They say it's like 500,000. But, people argue, it's not necessarily that they're all in the military. It's not the same as the U.S. here. But anyway, they have quite a few vehicles and they have tanks. So what they're really interested in is, ground invasion, neighboring areas, and defense. They are very defense heavy. And then they pay mercenaries to do all their dirty work, other countries. But the one key piece is at the very end of this article, it says a nuclear deal. Iran probably has nukes, right? I mean, people have been speculating about that forever. And Saudi Arabia would not want Iran to launch any nukes onto these U.S. air bases that are in their country. That would be a big no-no. They can handle ground troops and all this other stuff. Read between the lines of this article. Saudi Arabia is really letting the cat out of the bag. Iran has nukes, right? And so if this is the case, they are messing around with all of the canals, Strait of Hormuz and all the other places right there between Yemen, Saudi Arabia, all this. And they're messing with trade, and they're very upset with Israel, right? They don't like them. People are worried that if Iran gets back to a corner, they'll end up shooting off their nukes, and they've already showcased that they can do it with Israel. And as far as they pierce their Iron Dome system and hit a bunch of buildings over there, if they just had nuclear-tipped warheads on those missiles, who knows where we would be right now? It's hard to know. But the big takeaway from this whole thing, this whole situation, is what on earth do we do? I like to read the news. I like to do all this thinking and everything. But what does it mean for you and I just to read this and sit in our little corners and be scared? No. So you have to think preparedness. You have to think, what would life be like if something like this happened? Well, trade would be a lot different. Whenever there's a war, things become more expensive every time. It's, you break a window and you have to replace it, and you pay somebody to do it. Are you making the economy grow, or are you losing money? They're losing money. Wars are broken windows. It's an old saying. So you need to be able to figure out how to make more money as things get more expensive from, inflationary wars, because there's a lot of death that happens with wars too, if this were to happen, or it just keeps escalating. And also, by the way, Iran also has a bunch of oil. That's another, little thing that incentivizes people to invade certain countries. So expect oil prices could very well be higher. So, there's some basic stuff that you do. Get, fuel-efficient cars. Personally, what I would do is I would buy things like precious metals, because the second a war breaks out, everyone's going to panic, and precious metals are a flight to, safety during uncertainty. So, not saying that you should buy any of that stuff. I'm not a, financial expert or anything like that. And also, if, oil prices go up dramatically, it causes commodity prices to go up, because, to make a commodity, you have to have oil. It takes energy to build things and make stuff. So there's those ideas. And then also, I would think about being in safe places in the United States. Some of the big risk would be, back during the Obama era and all that stuff, we had a lot of attacks here in the United States in large groups, and, people with black flags, attacking everybody all around the world. You could see something very similar here in the U.S. during that period of time if there was some type of conflict with Iran. And if you didn't pay attention for the last 4 years, the border was wide open, and probably 10 to 20 million people came across the border. If just 1% of those people were bad actors, if 0.0 or 0.1%, 0.01% were bad actors, you're talking about tens of thousands of people who maybe are here right now to cause harm. And there's a lot of other articles. Tren de Agua, they were getting some text messages. This is very interesting the other day from people and supposedly from Iran, who were giving them orders to find anyone in special operations and to annotate where they live and report it back for intel gathering. So, look, things are getting wild. All you can do is just do your best to, be financially stable in case anything happens, and, consider safety risk. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Justin Madison, April 3rd, 2025. Have a good one. Bye.